So the natural order of things is restored. We're sitting beside each other.
Like to start?
You just realised you're up here?
I will tell you. You know what?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to start. Okay, I'm delighted to open the final session of this year's Global Gathering. I said at the very beginning that I hoped we'd all have some fun over the next 2 days, and that ambition has been, I think, well and truly realised. It's been just a wonderful occasion, a joyous gathering, and I think all enjoying each other's company, but also here for a really important common purpose. There'll be an opportunity at the end of the session for a more detailed saying of thanks, but I'll just take this opportunity to say thanks to Ersarin, to Isotolu Jalu and her wonderful team in WFP here for such wonderful, wonderful organisation. And And they've worked so well with the wonderful secretariat of the Sun Movement, led by Florence Leben. So, the other thing that was said at the very beginning, that we wanted this to be an occasion of learning, and I think it has very much been that. And that has all been reflected in all the myriads of discussions that have taken place, the informal contacts that are so valuable and that can be so built upon. I want, though, to set out what I think are some of the main outcomes of this year's global gathering. And I structure this around the 4 communities of practice that we've been discussing over the last 2 days. The first one deals with costing, implementing and financing multi-sectoral actions for improved nutrition. We learned that it's important to take time to get the right people involved in national multi-stakeholder platforms and to start small in the Common Results Framework and build from that. On costings and the Common Results Framework, there's by now good experience on costing nutrition-specific investments. The next work stage is to identify best practice for nutrition-sensitive investment. Countries have used various good methods to mobilise resources for the plan, and tracking of nutrition funds in the government budget is possible. But there is no single method to do it. So looking to the next steps, the movement will work to support all the newer members to develop their Common Results Framework. The COP will work with partners to disseminate good practices from countries on nutrition-specific investments and focus on a clear how-to for nutrition-sensitive in the next 6 months. It will also work with a group of countries to track and estimate resources focusing on transparency and replicability. And finally, it will aim to mobilise new and existing resources from government and partners to move to the action. So I think some really concrete measures emerging from that first community of practice on the costing and financing of multi-sectoral actions. The second one deals with social mobilisation, advocacy and communications for scaling up nutrition. So a great buzz of activity around this topic here over the last couple of days. The COP's discussions on this underline the importance of strong, clear and coherent messages from all stakeholders grounded in a common strategy with longer-term targets for all. It emphasised the importance of accessing the untapped potential and the experience of the private sector as a way to reach the most vulnerable and marginalised communities. And the media have really an important role to play here. There was agreement in our discussions on the technical evidence needs to be clear, but that evidence then must be translated into communication that can be understood and used for popular and political mobilisation. The ability to communicate effectively on a mass scale remains a serious challenge and will require all stakeholders to take on this challenge. And going forward, we need to make sure that we're not in the business of reinventing wheels or creating overcomplicated structures. We need to look at what exists, what's working and not working, and ensure that these lessons, tools and materials are harnessed and shared throughout the movement. The third COP was dealing with monitoring of progress, evaluation of outcomes and demonstration of nutrition results. And it really is important to identify the relevant indicators and information needed for decision making. If the data is used and published, this will create the demand for high quality data. And we really had it in a discussion I attended this morning on the ICE evaluation. This point came across loud and clear. There's the definition of clear nutrition-sensitive outputs will help with financial tracking. The data systems are there, but there is limited capacity to analyse the data for transforming the information into actionable decisions. and the community of practice will prioritise these issues in its work over the next year. And then the final, fourth community of practice is dealing with functional capacities for coordinated and effective SUN actions. And I think there's so often when we discuss the SUN and where it's going and what its potential is, we come back to this issue of capacity and how to work together to invest in it and improve on it. We really have to see how the various multi-stakeholder platforms can function specifically to ensure they can stimulate, coordinate, guide and support action around common objectives. Governments must recognise their own power to lead and should make sure that partners are fitting in within agreed national priorities. The need to make sure that we're not duplicating or putting in place overly complex systems is so important. Very important message came to us at one of our sessions yesterday, that leadership starts from where you are. Very good and simple principle. But everyone has their role to play in leading for nutrition within their space. And this group of nearly 300 people, or over 300 people, are effectively leaders in all your countries and at international level. So in terms of this last issue of functional capacities, the COP will bring together partners to support countries in their efforts to engage all stakeholders at all levels as they scale up nutrition. For example, the strengthening of the capacity of smallholder farmers and small and medium enterprises to engage in supporting national plans. So really trying to make sure that the key players contribute to a coordinated approach for the future. The final session then that I want to mention is the Science Roundtable, which was held yesterday, at the end of yesterday morning. And it really one came away with the conclusion from that, chaired expertly by Imorn from Thailand, that there is already a lot of involvement of academia in national platforms, but a lot of it is ad hoc, and there is need for structured interaction by policymakers and academics. Also the need to make sure that there is a real connection between the academic community and the policy community. Far too frequently that connection is not there, and there is a lack of knowledge on both sides of the process. And I think as we round off on our key messages of these few days, I want to recall again a key message that Mary Robinson left us with on Sunday evening, that we really must ensure that women are at the centre of what we're doing in the SUN movement, and that the connectedness of the issues of climate change, of nutrition, of food security and of human rights remain firmly in our minds. A key part of the last 2 days has been the possibility that we've had, and many of us have had, to engage with the team, the independent comprehensive evaluation led by Stephen Lister. There were two, I think, really good sessions this morning, which a number of you would have had a chance to attend and to engage with Stephen on this. It is of the most fundamental importance that we have an evaluation which is clear and, honest. It has to tell the truth about where we're at. But the whole purpose of that is to help us in the visioning of where the SUN might go from here. And a lot of you have engaged with the evaluation, and there may even be more engagement to come. But we now have the chance, and this is the part of the programme where you will, as a group, will have a chance to listen to Stephen, to hear an assessment of where the evaluation has got to, where it's likely to go to. And I would take pleasure in asking Stephen to speak. Stephen, down here, yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. The theme of the whole global gathering has been about learning, and I said on Sunday evening that we, the evaluation team, had come here to learn, and we can certainly say that we have learned an awful lot. Some of it expected, some of it unexpected. We leave with a much more tangible impression of the Sun movement at work, of the people who are involved in it, of the energies that engage in it. And I hope with an ability to write about it with sympathy and in the knowledge that this is a group of people who are reflective and will take constructive criticism and move forward with it, and are not only looking for praise. There will be plenty of praise in the report, although we are limited very severely on the length of what we're allowed to write. So the compliments will be brief but sincere. Evaluators traditionally begin by asking for a bit of sympathy. You have to have some sympathy with the fact that we are evaluating something that is new and that is a moving target. Sun was only set up in 2010. It went through a lot of evolution. In 2012, after the stewardship report, it adopted its current framework. It is a movement. It also has elements of organization, the building blocks that fit together, the 4 networks. Each of the networks, the civil society network, the UN network, the donor network, the business network, they have all been reflecting on what they do. If you look at the documents that describe their current ambitions and approaches, they're all quite recent. And therefore, it's in many ways, it's very early to be looking for final achievements of the movement, and I think everybody recognizes that. In addition, Sun is operating in a very crowded landscape. One of the annexes we put to our discussion paper was a listing of more than 20 international initiatives on nutrition, starting with ICN1, including more recently things like Nutrition for Growth, in between numerous G8 meetings and so on, many of which had the ambition to set up some kind of continuing network, forum, activities, accountabilities going forward. So that's something we need to take account of, and later this week we get the next in the line, a really important ICN2, which will again define the landscape for the future of Sun going forward. There's a small problem for evaluators. How do we, in the midst of all these things happening, how do we ascribe the credit to Sun for what may have happened? I mean, that's, in a sense, it's an academic issue. There's a more serious problem going forward of being very clear about what is the distinctive offering that Sun has. What is it that Sun can do that all these other initiatives, the other organizations that are involved in Sun can do, and being really clear about what it is that Sun attempts and what it will be judged by. We can, in terms of our emerging findings, we can certainly say that Sun has made a difference at the global level. It has helped to energize, to build commitment for addressing nutrition. It has been a valued focus for donors, NGOs, agencies to come together, collaborate with each other, and so on. And those who are involved in Sun want to keep it going and make it even more useful in the future. When we look at the country level, which we said is the litmus test of effectiveness, we found in the 8 countries that we looked at quite a varied pattern. I haven't got time to go through them all, but we found examples where Sun has quite clearly come at the right time to give a real boost to efforts that were going on in country, to give nutrition a higher status, to develop better policies, to get people involved in coherent plans and so on. We found other examples where things are happening in addressing nutrition, very impressive progress is being made, but you can't attribute it to Sun because it was happening before Sun was there. We found that doesn't mean that Sun has not been helpful, but it means we have to be careful not to try and take credit for the fact that Sun arrived on the scene of something good that was happening. And there may still be really valuable lessons to be taken from countries like that. We also found that the view from Geneva does not always match the view from the ground, that some of the countries that were described to us in Geneva as being stars and proof of Sun's effectiveness, and some which were described as perhaps making progress less rapidly. Our view from the ground was sometimes a little bit the opposite, that in some cases they were mistaking past progress for current activities and achievements. We found examples of large countries that were making big progress towards getting nutrition into national policies and into national programs and budgets, and systematically using messaging from the Sun to do that, and others where that wasn't happening. The key determinant in a lot of this was the degree of government engagement. And I say government engagement deliberately because it may be a frustration for other members of the platform that the government itself is not leading in some cases. Where it isn't, the message is that it's really difficult to get anything to happen. When we fed these findings back in our discussion groups this morning, we got some very clear messages back. One of the messages was that countries we hadn't visited and studied in detail volunteered that yes, Sun does make a difference to them. They expect it to add value. They particularly find that the international pressure, the peer pressure from other countries of belonging to the Sun movement helps them to keep Sun on the agenda going forward. And in many cases, the particular issue of how do we maintain a commitment to nutrition across changes of government or other events that may happen. They felt that the existence of Sun as an international movement was something that really helped them to keep nutrition alive in their particular countries. Interestingly, when we talked about whether Sun should focus more or less on certain countries or others, a very strong reaction was Sun is by definition an inclusive movement. The door is open for everybody. Some people said, well, the door isn't always very easy to find. And we may have some comments on the quality of communication and making sure that everybody understands what the issues and the options are. But the message was people should be in. But interestingly, also coming up from country level were people saying Sun should be more demanding. It doesn't take much to become a member country of Sun. There ought to be more accountability to make sure that governments actually carry through on the commitments that they implicitly make by saying that they're going to prioritize nutrition and so on. There were discussions as to whether that was sufficient to look at the process of setting up platforms and plans, or whether there needed to be a stage beyond that in terms of accountability. In addition, although interestingly it was accountabilities of country governments that came up first, it was also clear that people felt that all the members in Sun, all the people engaged with Sun, should make and accept accountabilities in the kind of way that Lawrence Haddad was talking about when he introduced the Global Nutrition Report. And that applies equally to donors, to international NGOs and others. So where, in a very short summary, where does that leave the evaluation in our verdict on Sun? We have the slogan up here, which is to engage, to inspire, to invest. We would say that, well, if you really want to judge Sun in the long term, you have to add another thing to that, because you've got to engage, you've got to inspire, you've got to invest, and that investment has got to change lives. Of course, it's too soon to measure changes in lives, but we need to bear in mind that that's what it's all about. And the form without the effects of that will not be worth anything. So what are the challenges going forward? We feel that Sun has been remarkably innovative, it's been nimble, we're not complaining about the fact that the design has been constantly changing. People have been learning from experience and trying to feed that experience into what they do. And it's made a virtue of flexibility. We feel that going forward, it will need, in some ways, to be a bit more organized and a bit more systematic in what it tries to do, but without losing its basic nature as a movement of countries where the focus is at country level. And if there is pressure on countries to do certain things, that pressure is primarily coming from their fellow countries who feel that these are standards that everyone should live up to and so forth. So we think that when it comes to looking at what the design of Sun should be in the future, we need to look at whether two things: perhaps more discrimination in the positive sense in the way that Sun's recipes are applied. And what I mean by that is that at the moment we seem to have a vision of Sun which at the center of the people involved in the movement, you have the 4 networks, you have the Sun Secretariat, and so on. At the country level, the advice is to replicate those networks in a fairly formulaic way. We find in practice that in a lot of countries there are adaptations. People who say, well, we've already got a joint UN and donor network, we don't need them to be separate, or we've got other ways of doing things, or actually we don't think we need to involve the business sector in quite the formal way that you're talking about in our case. Other dimensions of adapting to circumstance is the question of whether Sun can engage more effectively in fragile states where humanitarian issues are at the forefront and coordinate with the global nutrition clusters and so on and adapt in that way. Another one that comes up both in our case studies and were mentioned, that dealing with federal states where you have the cascade from federal to regional to local level may also require different adaptation. So we're probably going to have to go away and scratch our heads and try to make sure that we're not dealing with an impossible paradox in saying both be more systematic and at the same time be more adapted to how countries work. And the adaptation has to be based on a really good understanding of the difference between different countries and how they operate politically, and in general, a really good understanding of what it takes to get from policy level and advocacy into the nitty-gritty of getting things reflected in public sector budgets, in other activities at country level. So I think the final comment I want to make is about the governance of Sun at the center. And again, there's been a lot of ingenuity. There's never been anything organized in quite the way that Sun has been. We have our doubts whether the lead group, as it's currently constituted, can continue to serve and provide both the level of energetic championing that the Sun movement clearly will need to continue, and at the same time the kind of supervision of the activities that carry on within the Sun movement and the services that are provided by the Secretariat and the ways that it links up with other activities that are going on. So the challenge is to remain inclusive, to remain country-driven, and to seek to be even more effective and to take up Lawrence Haddad's challenge of seeking the right kinds of accountability that provide a real incentive and a spur to effectiveness in the future. Thank you.
Stephen, thank you very much. I think it has been of immense value that Stephen and his team from Mokoro have been here with us for the last 2 days. They've not only been picking up hard data and distinct opinions from people, but they've also had a real sense of what the Sun as a movement represent. And I think that's an important aspect of learning for Stephen and his team. We're now going to move on to a panel discussion on what has been learnt from scaling up nutrition so far. And we've a wonderful series of panelists, all very distinguished in their own way, and but they've all been asked to limit their enthusiastic response to 2 minutes, which is going to be quite a challenge. And I hope they'll be well up to it. So if I may sit down and we'll go. Yeah. We'll start with Nina Sajunani, Deputy Minister and Ministry of National Development Planning in the Government of Indonesia, and a very distinguished and thoughtful member of the Sun Lead Group. Nina.
Thank you very much, Tom. Tom has summarized all of the important issues we discussed in the last 3 days. But I would like to echo one thing, that is the importance of involving the academia from the beginning. And it's proven in Indonesia that we involve the academia from the beginning, and we get a lot of support, especially the evidence, scientific evidence, so that the movement can go on. So this movement needs to be supported by academia for being able to sustain beyond 2015. So that is what I would like to echo from what Tom has summarized. The second thing that we also discussed and we learned is that we need to work with the private sector, with the business network. But perhaps what needs to be provided to all of the Sun member countries is the guiding principles for governance. We did talk about as how we could work together with the business network. The last thing that I would like to highlight is the importance of all of us to work together in ensuring that Sun movement goes beyond 2015. All of the targets and the performance indicators that are stated and at the World Health Assembly resolution need to be included in the SDGs so that the nutrition indicators will be rich. And all of the efforts to implement the Sun movement will be included in the SDGs. It's not solely on the nutrition, but also what is more important is on the sensitive indicators that need to also be included in the SDGs. I think all of the Sun member countries will be fully facilitated if the SDGs could incorporate the important indicators into the document. Thank you.
Could I next ask Sean Baker, Director of Nutrition at the Gates Foundation, for a comment? Sean.
Thank you, Tom. When I was tasked with trying to say what have we learned, I found that it was a bit challenging because I think there's such an embarrassment of riches. We've really learned so much. So I thought I would start with one learning that I think is really important, an implication of that learning for the way forward, and then one word of caution. To me, I think the most fundamental learning is that indeed this very diverse nutrition community can play well together. If you take the 2008 Lancet series as the baseline, the diagnosis then was actually quite severe, that the system was broken, we were not playing well together, and in fact we were failing the cause of fighting undernutrition. And I think we've come a very long way. I speak from the perspective of having spent a lot of my life as an NGO from the civil society side. In my new life on the donor side, I think we really have seen huge progress in actually working together towards a common vision, and that, in fact, we've moved from having our diversity being a real handicap to being a real strength. Where I think there's a major implication is that we've built this incredible capital of goodwill working together. And I think, as the evaluation will say, we actually probably have some pretty tough decisions to make as we envisage the next generation of Sun. And we need to make sure we're actually using that capital of goodwill to have those hard discussions and make those hard decisions, and always keep and using that to really make sure we're having the most positive impact on the people we serve. I guess my word of caution is that indeed we have become much more well-behaved as a community, but I fear that perhaps we're going overboard in our good behavior. Because if you actually look at movements that have been successful in the past, they've really been fueled by a real sense of outrage. I mean, if you look at the HIV community, you had activists scaling the walls of Parliament. Unfortunately, we don't have children suffering from stunting who are out there scaling the walls of Parliament. So we actually need to make sure we are channeling our sense of outrage. And I would posit that there can be no greater outrage facing our world today than the levels of undernutrition and what it's doing in contributing to mortality and compromising children's future. And we really need to make sure we're channeling that outrage to really recast the narrative so that inaction is no longer acceptable. Thank you.
Could I just say, well said, Sean. Our next speaker is, great welcome, Valentina Mendes, Minister of Public Health, Guinea-Bissau.
Obrigada.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the Sun Movement for accepting Guinea-Bissau into the movement. Also like to say that my presence here bears out the importance and priorities established by the new government of Guinea-Bissau, which wishes to put the issue of malnutrition at the forefront of our country's priorities. It's a very disturbing phenomenon. Guinea-Bissau is number 49 since the 14th of February this year, and we understood the importance of civil society when it comes to dealing with malnutrition. If we look at countries like Peru, Salvador, Indonesia, the commitment of governments with our brothers of Côte d'Ivoire and Senegal, we see that the mobilization of resources in countries like Nigeria and others. We, as one of the newest members, have taken steps, significant steps, we believe, in looking at a framework budget. We have a national nutrition policy and a multi-sectorial strategic plan which will be presented in the roundtable of our country in February 2015. We have already looked at the necessary legal instruments which will be necessary to implement all activities linked to nutrition questions. A committee was set up which is looking at the multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder platform. Now, for next year, 2015, when it comes to the evaluation, the global evaluation, we shall be able to hold our head high and show good practices in terms of nutrition, an example to other countries, hopefully. We would also like to thank the invitation to be here and stay here to the movement in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Valentina, Minister. Our next speaker is Schengen Fan from the IFPRI, Director General IFPRI.
Thank you, Tom. Well, SUN is a movement which created a big wave to really put nutrition very high in the global development agenda. So I should congratulate the leadership of the Sun Movement, David Navarro, Tom, country level stakeholders, and many other stakeholders. We made a difference, and we congratulate you on that. However, when we move forward, when we discuss about the post-2015 agenda, let's make sure that hunger, malnutrition should have higher priority than reducing poverty. We have ambition to eliminate extreme poverty by 2030. To do that, we must end hunger, malnutrition before that. We cannot end extreme poverty when we have empty stomach, when we are undernourished. Can we achieve zero hunger or zero undernutrition by 2025? So here, I'm so glad to see many countries, leaders here in pushing their national nutrition agenda. I think the country's leadership, country's capacity, country's ownership is so critical. To do that, we need to support them. Minister from Indonesia mentioned about the importance of research, knowledge. We need knowledge. We need a research-based, evidence-based knowledge. We need to work together to bring this knowledge together to guide our future investment, our future work. So here, from more concretely, can we work together to set up a knowledge hub to support various initiatives like Sun and even beyond? I would call it Compact 2025. So under this compact, we bring different stakeholders together, bring the knowledge, information together, data together, best practices based on research, scale them up, make sure that the leaders in the country are accountable to the indicators we have all committed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Schengen. Our next contributor is Mark van American, Executive Director of GAIN.
Thanks, Tom. Well, I think as we reflect on the lessons that we've learned, I think there are also key areas where I think we've been successful and we can do more of. Certainly the leadership that we've had and the fact that we've been able to have a broad base of leadership, I think that's what's got us here. And so I think part of going forward is how do we build this leadership base out further? I think secondly, we've been very successful at using evidence-based advocacy. And I think that's really been the key, the 2 Lancet series and other work. And I think the Global Nutrition Report called this out. We need more data, we need more research to get the next level of advocacy. I think the third thing that's been really important, and we do have some quick wins. I think when we started this, we felt we might have to wait a generation till we saw changes in stunting, and then we're seeing cases like Maharashtra and others where it's 7 years. So we need more quick wins. We really need to focus on getting those right investments in key places. I think what's been remarkable about this movement, it actually has brought accountability up to the top of the agenda. And I think where we've moved most has been where we've had clarity on accountability, and in some areas, like I think around the private sector, we moved least quickly because we're not clear about the accountability. So I think that is again, there's a very big unfinished agenda there. I think on partnerships, it's been, the whole of Sun is a partnership, but partnerships are really difficult in all areas. And I think we're learning that they take a long time, they're not easy, sometimes they don't work, they need a huge amount of energy. And I think we just need to realize that's the beast that we've built, not shy away from that. I think the last point is that advocacy and mobilizing people isn't enough. I think but where we got to now is, we really do need to show that we are changing lives, and that really requires real investment in resources around capacity building and in rolling out programs. And I think that's the stage we're at. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I'm delighted to ask Mira Sherkar, the lead health and nutrition specialist of the World Bank, to speak. Mira, I would always give her enormous credit for being one of the driving forces behind a hugely influential World Bank report in 2006 called Repositioning Nutrition, and she's done a lot since then as well. Mira.
Thank you, Tom. You make me blush. I'm glad that you can't see the color from there, I hope. Just a quick things. I think several people have already said many of the things. There's lots and lots and lots to celebrate around the sun where we are today. When in 2010 we conceptualized the idea, I think nobody expected the level of engagement and the level of inspiration that Sun, under David's leadership and others have gotten to that place. I think really, really big kudos to the political commitment that has been built, the advocacy that has been done, the engagement is really incredible. I think if we look at the three words that are written there, engage, inspire, and invest, the Sun movement has done incredible things on engagement, on inspiration. I think we would be shortchanging ourselves if we didn't look carefully at where we are on the investment side. And we had a whole session this morning. Clearly, there is something more that needs to be done on the investment side. And, okay, so on the investment side, I think the only way we can succeed on the investment side is if we produce results. So if there are three things that we should be doing, it's results, results, and results. Those are the only three things that we want to focus on. And if we want to get results, we want to focus on three things again. Three is my mantra. First is evidence. Do we have the evidence? And the answer is very clear. At least on the nutrition-specific side, we have the evidence. On the nutrition-sensitive side, there's more faith than evidence, but hopefully the evidence will come as well. Second thing we need is to be able to act, and act at scale on the evidence that is available. That is possible, given what we know today. And reducing the gap between what we know and what we do at scale is absolutely critical to the success of the Sun as we go along. But to make that happen, we need the resources, especially at the country level, so that the countries can scale up what they have promised to do. The current wisdom seems to be that we're not going to be able to raise those resources from just the ministries of finance and the domestic resources, or even from overseas development aid. Should we, as the nutrition community, be looking at other opportunities? There's been a lot of conversations in this room around the engagement of the private sector on that listing. There's been less discussion on innovative financing mechanisms for nutrition. I think that is something. I want to stop there because time is short, but it's an area that we should look at much more carefully to see how we can leverage the resources that are needed. Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Mira. I'd like to introduce William Chulufla. William, I'm sure I'm not very good at pronouncing your name, but not to worry. William has made a really important contribution in Zambian civil society network. Since the beginning of SUN, he's been a really great voice and representative of civil society and of Zambia. William.
Thank you so much. William Chilufya is my name. Thanks a lot. Yeah, there are a lot of things to be proud of on SUN in Zambia, and I totally believe that the place for nutrition would have not been where it is today had it not been for the SUN movement. So that's something to be proud of as an outcome of the SUN movement. What we've learned so far with the SUN movement is that, first of all, we need now to focus more on accountability, as we saw yesterday from the Global Nutrition Report, and that as civil society, we're well positioned to ensure that we advocate for accountability mechanism and holding stakeholders to account, but also not forgetting that even civil society needs to be held to account. Then we've also learned that civil society can only thrive in the presence of funding. So without funding, civil society may cease to exist and they might be irrelevant. We've also learned that good statistical information is important and should be a must, and therefore it will be very important going forward that we could have statistical information coming out, at least on an annual basis, using the same indicators across all countries, and this shall help us to hold ourselves accountable, but also trying to find out where the need is. We've also learned that building capacity for scaling up nutrition at all levels is the prerequisite, which may require stakeholders like donors to fund unconventional, longer-term training activities such as university courses and scholarship, and also to ensure that there are courses that are aimed at retraining certain staffs in key sectors to ensure that nutrition sensitivity is well embedded in those sectors. We've also learned that information sharing and openness is very key to scaling up nutrition, and that we should know what each stakeholder is bringing on board and what they're doing for all of us to engage effectively. Lastly, just to also mention that as civil society, we have been working towards ensuring that in the post-2015, we could have an independent goal on food and nutrition security, and we've produced this brief, which said call to action, nutrition in the post-2015 development agenda. And we call upon, the governments, especially our, African governments, and where the problem is felt the most, to ensure that, we work much more closely and ensure that, we have an independent goal on nutrition in the post-2015 development agenda.
Thank you very much, William. And now I'd like to ask Jean-Pierre Alcon, who's head of the Unit of Rural Development, Food and Nutrition Security in the European Commission, and who's been a wonderful source of leadership and consistent advocacy and getting things done within the Commission over the past number of years.
Thank you very much, Tom. I could limit myself to say that I subscribe to what was already said. But still, it is worth to go backward to 2010, when, as it was already said, nutrition was nowhere on the agenda, on the development agenda. And a meeting of the Sun Movement could be held in a room not bigger than the floor of this big meeting room. And when we see where we are today, where nutrition is, and where the Sun Movement is, with 1,500 people meeting here today in Rome, it is a wonderful track record. If I need to qualify the Sun Movement, I would like to use 6 words. 4 starting with an I, 1 with a C, and the last one with an A. The first one, it is certainly inclusive, is that we have partner countries on board, CSOs, donors, private sectors, UN organizations, everyone is on board. It was also informal, and it is still very informal. It was intuitive from the start. People were trying to feel where they could go to lift nutrition on the agenda. It has been highly innovative. Then, the next word for me important, it was cheap in the meaning resource efficient. I mean, whenever we see the amount of money, resources devoted to the sun and what has been achieved, for me it is incredibly efficient. And then the last word for me starts with an A and is addictive. I see many new faces around, but I see all the faces are still there. They are maybe wearing new caps, but they are still there. And this is extremely also impressive. And for me, it is really a track of success. Still, we are at a tipping point. We have generated huge expectations, notably at the Nutrition for Growth Summit. And we need to shift gear and to change the movement to become more systemic. And for me, with 3 priorities that I gathered from today's meeting. One is strengthen capacities in partner countries, but also for donors, UN organizations, CSOs, private sector. Strengthening capacity is key. Then mobilize the resources we pledge to mobilize. And then the last one is to track progress. We will not be given a second opportunity to move nutrition on top of the agenda, and we need to demonstrate that we are achieving the progress, and I'm very encouraged by what I heard. So, what I feel by all the energy provided by all the participants is that this challenge is doable. But we still have a long, long way forward, a lot of work, a lot of extra hours, a lot of time spent in planes and hotels, but it is really worth it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Pierre. Well, it's a particular pleasure, of course, to introduce the final panel speaker, Erthrin Cousin, Executive Director of WFP and our host. If I find that I'm not on a panel with Erthrin about 8 or 10 times a year, I get an aching feeling, and I know something's not quite right with the world. So this is one of those 8 or 10 times this year. So Erthrin, over to you.
Thank you so much, Tom. And everything's already been said, and so I'm going to try to avoid repeating it. And I can start with one issue that wasn't brought up on this panel, surprisingly, but was brought up in this room over and over again and through the halls, and that is the importance of women to this movement. And I don't know how you all forgot all that, but the reality is we know we won't make the progress that is required if we don't continue to center women and women's progress in this movement. Second, we talked a lot about data and data access. There's a term that I believe Kofi Annan has now started using, which is the democratization of data, because it's who has data, and ensuring the globalization of data and the availability of that data at every level of this movement is going to be paramount to our success in achieving at country level. And the final thing I'd like to say, because I get to be on the next panel, so I don't need to talk a lot. The final thing I'd like to say is, as we assess where we go from here, we need to recognize that the outcomes that we achieve, the elimination of stunting, of chronic malnutrition of the 161 million children who are chronically malnourished, getting us to 0 stunted children is the goal that we are trying to achieve. It is not creating another bureaucracy. This is truly a movement. The excitement that we felt in this room, around these halls, and when we go to the countries, when I met with Pakistan today and they were just chomping at the bit from 3 different ministries to tell me about their success at country level in doing what they thought was right for Pakistan, not what New York or Geneva or Rome said was right for them. And we need to accept that, all of us who sit in global headquarters across the world and donors who are providing the support, that this movement will look different every place it's implemented. And that needs to be okay, as long as we're achieving the outcomes of the elimination of stunting and chronic malnutrition. And we need to recognize that this is going to get harder. And some will say it's already hard. But I can tell you it will get harder, because there will be other priorities that will become the center of global conversation. Just as we have much attention now on nutrition, it is going to be up to all of us to continue to drive this movement from the country level up, talking about using the megaphone of our success to continue to generate the support that is going to be required for us to move forward between now and 2025 to eliminating stunting in our world. And together we can do it. Thank you all very much.
Okay, that concludes the panel. I want to thank all the panelists. I really want to thank all of you. I've enjoyed enormously the last 2 days. I've enjoyed talking to so many of you, and the feeling that really, again, we're all engaged in something of profound importance, and I think captured at the end by Ertharin's call as to what we have to do in the future. Thank you again, and over to you, Ertharin, for the second panel. Thank you.
If we could very quickly change panels and get our next group of panelists up to the table and change the table markings. I ask everybody, just stand up. All of you here in the room, stand up. Nobody leave the room. Stand up. Stand up, stretch. Say hello to your neighbor, chit-chat a bit. Panelists, move to the front. You know who you are. You're very slow. All right, I'm telling the guards, don't let anybody out the door. Yeah, that's you. Come on, come on. Chop, chop, chop. Okay, if I can get everyone to take their seats. We are ready to begin the next panel. Okay, when I told you to talk to your neighbors, I thought you would know to stop. All right, let me thank Tom Arnold for his amazing leadership in stepping in for David Nabarro, as David has been working to help us eliminate and rid the world of Ebola. Tom has been an amazing leader, and I think we should give him a round of applause for not just what he's done over the past couple days, but for ensuring that this movement hasn't skipped a beat. And we appreciate your leadership so much, Tom. And I want to thank all the panelists on the last panel and all of you for being here today. Over the last 2.5 days, we reflected on progress in scaling up nutrition in the Sun countries. We've heard the achievements, we've heard the challenges, we've shared lessons. We've talked with each other about what works best and where we need to change. We spoke candidly and openly about the shared challenges because as a group, we recognize that when we pool our experience and expertise to tackle problems, we can collectively overcome those problems. This is why this next panel is so important, because this next panel will look forward. As we said on Sunday evening, never before have we had such an opportunity to end malnutrition in all of its forms in our lifetimes. But we must look outward from this movement, because every good movement in history, as the evaluator says, has been impacted by many other activities, actions, individuals who weren't necessarily part of the movement per se, but in some cases they were tangentially, some cases they were completely divorced from it. But it was working together towards a shared goal. And that's where we are as a global community, as organizations, as a diverse group of actors working together to ensure that we can eliminate stunting in our lifetime. So this afternoon in this panel, we will begin with the process of thinking about the future and how do we reach out. Of course, tomorrow's important start of the International Conference on Nutrition is a key opportunity where leaders from around the global community will come to discuss the going forward that is required from not just the global level, but from their countries as well. But we must think even beyond ICN2 to post-2015, the Sustainable Development Goals. And what is the work that is happening even outside our UN system that we should have in our sights as we work together to end stunting. So the question that has been posed to each member of this panel is how the experience of scaling up nutrition can inform global processes. Hopefully that's the question you've all been asked to answer, because that's what we're going to be looking for you. But we'd also like to have an opportunity to hear a bit from the audience as well. So we're going to ask the panelists to keep their comments to 2 minutes or less, so that we have an opportunity to hear from the audience. And I think that because we have so many members who are outside of those who have been in the meeting all for the last 2 days, we should also introduce them. Patrina Hengura is the Deputy Minister of Health in Namibia, who will speak on behalf of the lead group member Nahas Angula. And Patrina, thank you so much for being here today. You're our first speaker. Go ahead.
For the floor. Really, I'm happy to be here and talk about the issue of the Sun movement. I think the most important thing for us to make sure that we remove this malnutrition so that we can have the zero, which we are all aiming to have. I want to start with a country itself, that ownership of the program is very, very important, and accountability for us to ensure where we want to be. Post-2015, we want also to see that nutrition still remain on the higher on the agenda of how we can reduce this problem of malnutrition. And as somebody has said, that for us to achieve these things, we need to put women on the center of the agenda. Because when you empower women, you empower the nation. But I'm not saying that we should leave the men behind, because a child is from men and women. But why I'm saying like that, who always in the kitchen is a woman. That's why we are saying, let us empower women to have enough resources to feed their husbands and their children. Then we will not have a problem of nutrition. That's very, very key. And another thing what I want to add here is resource mobilization. If we want to put issue but there's no money, we'll not achieve whatever we want to achieve. And we need to start in our country ourselves, because always say charity start at home. When you have a little thing in your home, then you can go to the neighbor, tell them, this is what I have, can you add for us to reduce the malnutrition? And I have learned a lot here, and we are enthusiastic to go home to tell the people in Namibia that nothing has worked so well, and the Sun movement, you have just really triggered us that malnutrition should come to an end. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Patrina. We really appreciate your comments. So next we have Michael Morisani, the Vice President of EFAD. Michael.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all. To be brief, perhaps from my perspective, 3 messages. And the first one would be that building on what you have been doing over the past 2 years, I think we should definitely commit ourselves to better share experiences on what we know works to improve nutrition. From an IFAD perspective, certainly areas of investing in smallholder farmers, empowering women, diversifying production and extending dietary diversity. I think these are areas we should do more in terms of sharing and putting on the table. The second element would be in terms of experience from an IFAD perspective. To do more for scaling up for nutrition, we must focus more on nutrition-sensitive agriculture. And I think this is for us at IFAD a new line of work, a new commitment. I think this means that we have to make some significant change to write nutrition into the very DNA of the investment policies of the institution. And perhaps the third message in terms of contribution, I think, is that definitely lasting solution lie only in building partnerships. And I think we cannot achieve through single institution agencies work. We need to work together and to make really a difference collectively. And on that front, I believe the Rome-based agencies, the World Food Programme, the FAO, and IFAD have a special responsibility. And in the recent past, with the post-2015 agenda, we have demonstrated our capacity jointly to deliver a common holistic view on food systems and to shape a number of joint targets and indicators. We need to continue on that track. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael, for a very thoughtful insight. Marie Konote, who is the CEO of Protein Kisela from Côte d'Ivoire. My French is bad, Marie.
Worse than my English. Please, I will speak in French. My name is Marie Djongoy Konate. Thank you very much. Alors, merci. Je suis Marie.
So thank you very much. I'm the CEO of a small company in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. It's PKL, my company, is the first Ivorian company which in '98 introduced a fortified, enriched children's cereal for 6-month-plus children in order to cover the requirements of the 1,000-day child. We have always been a part of the GAINA goal in order to enrich our infant meals, to give better access for our Ivorian children to nutritious meals. We believe that after our work with Gail, we have been able to indeed reach out to some 50,000 children. So our partnership is doing well. As a woman and as the head of the CU, of course, I had to cope with ever so many difficulties. especially when it came to fundraising and the distribution of infant food, because I was venturing into an international corporate sector, and none of the wholesalers were my scale company, and certainly not managed by women. And I worked with various stakeholders in my country in this effort. Women have to cope with social, financial, and technical obstacles over and above all of the normal small company obstacles, of course. I would just confirm that. have still survived as a company today, and I'm part of the Sun movement because of the Gay Foundation. And I would like to thank the Gay Foundation for its financial support, for having pointed me at the proper way of producing and manufacturing. It's because of them that we are doing so well, that we're nutrition champions. It's important to have firmer support, even to encourage yet other companies to follow our pathway to development, because small companies which would be able to pursue this development in this sector. The Sun platform, I believe, can engage in advocacy to support this sort of movement. Had we not had the political military crisis we went through over the last couple of years, we probably wouldn't have had to encounter as many nutritional challenges. And Houphouët-Boigny, the president of our country, has made the agriculture the driver in development. It's impossible indeed to do without agriculture. The candidate in 2010 for the election had put into his program for election, for example, the access of the poor to a better nutrition. But then there was a war and strife, and he wasn't able to completely implement his program at the time. But it's thanks to this president, and because 2013 was a good harvest year, that in 2013, Côte d'Ivoire got involved in the Sun movement. We became a Sun country. And it's the self-same year that Côte d'Ivoire also signed the substitution for mother's milk campaign. You see, we made enormous headway. And my company was awarded a National Prize of Excellence, and I was as well personally, for the advocacy and production of infants' milk and for women's empowerment in the agricultural sector. So all of that is happening in my country. To conclude, why is it that companies like mine need the Sun movement and an efficient and effective platform? We need other small companies, medium-sized companies to join this movement so that there's information on the legislation, the codes that are in effect, in order to abide by those codes, in order to manufacture good meals, good food products in alignment with those legislation. I think that instead of working in isolation, in a fragmented fashion, we would do better to not stand divided. And we indeed also, with this program, can be helped in identifying the financing sources which need to fuel our efforts. And why do these small and medium-sized companies need this financing? To avoid all sorts of manufactural mistakes. Money's necessary to fuel good work, you know. So we need to work to close the gap also between the private and the public sector. The private sector isn't a bad capitalist boogeyman in any way. The civil servant is not a mule-headed creature either. And I think that we could, if we brought these two individuals together, we would possibly all stand to gain. The SME can't do everything all on its own. We have to work together in order to raise those walls of mistrust and suspicion. We, for example, also have to refer to institutions like USAID and the WFP, which could usefully join all of these local production efforts, producing local products to respond to nutrition challenges. But very often these small companies have a hard time because there's also a competition between international food aid products and local production and food products. So it's artificial to always work on the basis of international assistance. But one must think in terms of the entire chain of production. A couple of days ago, I was appointed and elected the head of 116 agro companies in Africa, AFREX it's called, and many of these small companies are headed by women. I didn't run for office, but I'm very happy actually that I was elected because I'm going to be able to get them involved, get them included in the Sun movement, and get them pointed at the right direction. Because we need a very strong, business-oriented Sun. Thank you very much.
Well, Madam CEO, you have definitely told us why business is important to the future of the Sun movement. And I would just take a liberty here and ask Ramiro Lopez da Silva to please stand up so you can see him, because if you are prepared to sell to WFP, we are prepared to buy from you, okay? So you need to see him when you leave here today, okay? All right, let's move on. Mike Penrose is the Executive Director of Action Against Hunger in France. And Mike is going to also give us information about how we need to move forward with global processes in support of the Sun movement.
No, absolutely. Thanks very much. Just first to start with, Action contre la faim, Action Against Hunger, is a very proud member of the civil society group within Sun. And I stress that because I believe that it is that linkage that is going to allow us in the future to address not only the largest number of malnourished, but also the most vulnerable. I stress that as well because in 20 years of humanitarian work, I don't think I've ever seen as much collective soul-searching going on as is happening at the moment. As a reminder, between now and 2017, we have ICN2 coming up. We have the post-2015 Sustainable Development Goals. We have the Climate Change Conference in Paris. And we have the World Humanitarian Summit, all of which should and provide an excellent opportunity, I feel, for Sun to both bring this base of evidence, this movement, to bear in order to address some of the inequalities we've seen in the past, which is a lack of focus on undernutrition and malnutrition in the majority of indicators and goals set over the last 10 to 15 years. The first one in this I'd like to stress is, and it was brought up by Stephen before, this linkage between humanitarian and development within the future of Sun. I believe is absolutely critical. At the moment, Sun, if I can be honest, is pretty much focused on an elite group of organizations, or elite group of countries that has the infrastructure that is possible to implement both the modalities and the approaches approved. Where we're seeing the greatest caseload and the most vulnerable people suffering from undernutrition today are in countries that are fragile, that do not have the infrastructure required to implement what we've been talking about at the moment. And it is only through liaison and equal focus with governments and civil society, especially grassroots civil society organizations, that we're going to be able to reach the most vulnerable and the people most affected by both stunting and wasting. I stress wasting as well as stunting. I believe it plays an invaluable role in the future. Now, there was a fallacy before that the reason that stunting should be the primary focus, and I'm not arguing against that, was that wasting was primarily caused because of a lack of food. That's wrong. It is not. The causes are exactly the same. They are health, a lack of access to health infrastructure. It is agricultural issues, a lack of balance, a rupture in agricultural production due to shocks, and it is linked to water and sanitation. These are the same reasons. We're seeing the same caseloads in the same places. So I think it is actually a fallacy only to focus on wasting and not to have a focus on stunting. The problems coexist. And this, to me, is incredibly important because it's about providing not just nutritional security for some, but the concept of nutritional justice for all. And that, I think, has to be the next step in the evolution of the Sun movement. The second one, I think, is a link between, it appears to be the word that donors like to use the most. Up until recently, I didn't even know what it meant. It was just a word I used every third word in order to get projects I wanted funding. And that word is resilience. Everybody seems to like resilience at the moment. But for me, there is no clearer linkage than the linkage between undernutrition and the word resilience. Somebody who is well-nourished and well-fed has a better chance of surviving, and with Mr. Nabarro's focus at the moment, surviving, for example, Ebola or other diseases. And as Ebola becomes not just an epidemic, but endemic to West Africa, is a focus we have to maintain. Somebody who is well-nourished has a better chance of surviving short-term shocks or conflict in states that are considered fragile today. And this, again, resilience and the resilience agenda is a link where I think there is a very, very clear role for some to play. The Sustainable Development Goals. To date, we have not had a champion, somebody who can mainstream nutrition as a cross-cutting issue, because let's face it, most of the Millennium Development Goals today are unobtainable without good nutrition. So an organization that can mainstream nutrition into the forthcoming Sustainable Development Goals. We need a champion that can set objectives, and we need a champion that can set indicators. We have a group here who have been working on that for a long time. If we can broaden the focus, there is a role there, and it's one where I think there is definitely a place for Sun. And finally, as I've mentioned, the climate change agenda. In the run-up to Paris and to Lima, which beforehand, it's worth remembering an extra 200 to 600, depending on estimates, million people will be affected by hunger caused by climate change. If I can quote Mark Malloch Brown in terms of the recent Ebola epidemic, I cannot believe after all these years of investment, we are still unable to cope with a crisis of this magnitude. I would really like to challenge this room with the knowledge that 200 to 600 million more people are going to be hungry caused by climate change. And if we do not build the link between nutrition and climate change, Mark Malloch Brown will have the right to say the same thing in about 10 years' time. Thank you.
Very much, Mike, for what we always expect from you, and that is very direct and honest dialogue about the challenges as we go forward. From there, another honest speaker, Gerda Verberg, who is the chair of the Committee on World Food Security. Gerda.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, congratulations and happy celebrations, because you reached a lot as Sun movement. But it's time to step forward out of your comfort zone. By thinking ahead, it means that you should act in future bold, pragmatic, and unavoidable. And by looking at the global infrastructure, we have important things ahead. Tomorrow, ICN2 will start. Well, there will be no implementation of the outcome and results without a multi-stakeholder approach. Because it's not only about what, it's also about the who and the how. And there is a lot to improve if it comes to implementation of the outcomes of ICN conferences. Secondly, we have the Sustainable Development Goals, and I learned that in this meeting, some people were not satisfied with the number of mentions, the number that nutrition was mentioned. Well, it's not about how many times nutrition is mentioned. It is how we can make the difference in providing indicators, sub-targets, how we can address the need for an enabling environment, a legal infrastructure at country level, and how we multi-stakeholders are able to work on this at country level and to influence and make it really happy. Out of the comfort zone, bold, pragmatic, and unavoidable. Last topic. I'm the chair of the Committee on World Food Security, and we are dealing with food security and all related topics, so nutrition-sensitive agriculture. Let us make nutrition a business case. Let us make nutrition-sensitive more attractive and more rewarding and better paying than not nutrition-sensitive agriculture. But also let us rethink economics in order to also have incentives, better incentives along the whole food chain for producing and providing better nutrition food for those who are are dealing with undernutrition, but also for the very fast growing group of overnutrition. Obesity is really becoming a bigger and bigger problem. Think out of the box, be bold, be pragmatic. That's my suggestion, and there is a lot to win, and for that reason I think sun should be unavoidable. One last cry out of my heart. Mary Robinson said, women at the center. Earthlyn Cousin underscored this, and I will not only underscore it, I will go beyond. Because it is necessary to rethink traditions. It is necessary to rethink and to change cultural habits. It's not only, they are all women, but put women at the center, put mothers at the center, and start with putting girls at the center. Thank you very much.
As always, you remind us, Gerda, to think outside the box, be bold, and be pragmatic. And that's, if we won't remember anything else, we should remember that. And let's move on to Jomo Sundaram. Jomo is with us from FAO. He's the Assistant Director General at FAO. Thank you, Jomo, for being here.
Thank you very much, Earthlyn, and let me congratulate you as the hostess for this Sun gathering, and also to the leaders of Sun, the organizers, those of you who are here for this event. This is a very important contribution to what has turned out to be Nutrition Week in Rome here. And I think this is a very, very promising step as we attend to nutrition much more effectively. When David Nabarro spoke to me early this year about doing this back-to-back with the ICN2 movement, I thought this was wonderful, and I think this has exceeded all expectations we had. Let me turn quickly to the Mukoro assessment, which I think is very, very useful and which we have a great deal to learn from. And one of the points which was made also in the presentation is the whole question of government involvement and the role of government. And this is what is happening what will be highlighted over the next 3 days, and I would add also today. Elsewhere in Rome, parliamentarians from over 50 countries are meeting, close to where the first parliament met in the Rome Forum. And this is a very important commitment, because ultimately what is very badly needed is the commitment not only of governments but of legislators to enable, for example, for constitutions to guarantee the right to food, enabling legislation to make everything which is needed possible, budgets to fund, for example, sanitation for nutrition. The second very important development which has occurred in the recent period, in my view, is the recognition of the role of social protection. And Madame Michelle Bachelet, the current president of Chile, was chairing the panel which brought this to attention of the world through the UN General Assembly. This is very important because we know that the big problem today is not that there is not enough food. There's enough food in the world today to feed everybody. The problem is that of access. And there are over 800 million people today who remain chronically hungry. There are many, many more who suffer from various micronutrient deficiencies, and all this needs to be addressed and challenged. And social protection is especially important and useful, in my view, particularly to address very difficult questions of diets. This can be done through school feeding programs and through a variety of other ways in which it would have other consequential effects, which I don't have time to get into right now. The third point, which has been made by Mary Robinson and by many others, including you, Madam Chair, is the question of the role of women. I think we are all used to the lip service which is given about gender equality and so on and so forth. But I think when it comes to nutrition, women have the leading role. There's no doubt about it. They are leading as far as producers are concerned, because as everyone in this room knows, women constitute the large majority of smallholder family farm producers. They are most important as far as caregivers, and this again is very, very crucial in terms of various decisions which are made relating to food consumption on the part of the family. And very important, women also have different needs as consumers. They have different nutrition needs, and it's very important for us to sensitize the world to this. So I think we need to go beyond the question of gender equality to recognize the leading role of women and the crucial role of women if we are to be able to make progress on nutrition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jomo, for helping us secure a successful week of nutrition here in Rome with your participation here today, and by reminding us that we can't forget about sanitation as we particularly talk about the issues of nutrition. And when we talk about absorption and micronutrients, that takes us to our next speaker, Francesca Branca, the Director of Nutrition for WHO.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm very pleased to be here in this place where I think we can say that Sun was born. I mean, I remember that Sun was born in Rome a few years ago. And so we're not only celebrating a birth date, but also a birthplace. And it's great to see that we are here creating momentum for nutrition. And tomorrow we'll meet with other 1,500 people and from over 160 countries that will be convened to have a collective global understanding of what needs to be addressed in nutrition. And that's the first important achievement, to have a clear understanding of what is our common agenda. And I must say that the generation of this concept was very much born together with Sun. We had, the preparation was really done from the very first moment together with the Sun team. And there's a common understanding now of what the root causes of malnutrition are. It's not just food security and poverty, but it's a lack of access to health, to education, to water, to sanitation, aggravated by the situation in the environment, by the scarcity of resources, and by the misalignment of the economic development objectives and health and nutrition objectives. So what we hope to see at the end of this Nutrition Week is a common vision to change the state of the play with policy alignment in different sectors. First of all, to achieve a food system which is enabling everybody in all parts of the world, in all social economic status, to have access to healthy diets, to good nutrition. A vision that whereby the health services deliver the effective nutrition actions. A vision where breastfeeding is protected and promoted. So we have the opportunity to change the world. And there is going to be a commitment by all the ministers and by all the partners to achieve this vision at least in the next 10 years. So we have in front of us 10 years of action. And that's where the other synergy is. Without a movement and without the involvement of different sectors of society, we won't be able to achieve this vision. So we have to work together, and we'll then be able to celebrate in 10 years' time this achievement, maybe with another gathering like this, but with success that has been charted and described in all countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francesco, for that very powerful statement and recognition that we have to work together. With that, we have a few minutes to go to the audience. Let's hear from you. Oh, I'm sorry, did I? Oh, I'm sorry, Lois Brown. How did I? Ms. Brown, Parliamentary Secretary from the Government of Canada, one of the second largest funder of WFP. Let me apologize. I would genuflect if you would accept that. Please, Ms. Brown, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, so we'll just carry on. It really is an honor to be here with you today, and thank you so much for the invitation to be here. As we work to define the post-2015 agenda, the Sun Movement and the conference that is going to start tomorrow is going to provide key inputs to framing nutrition in the coming decades. And with all this discussion about putting women and girls at the center of these issues, I'm very pleased to say that Canada has chosen to put maternal, newborn, and child health as our priority. We recognize that in this, the importance of nutrition is key, and we commit to improving nutrition as a key focus of our maternal, newborn, and child health initiatives. We can do this through a renewed global strategy for women's and children's health. And I encourage you to engage in this process and to help ensure that nutrition is a key part of international efforts on maternal, newborn, and child health. So often, nutrition straddles the fence between food security and health programming. We must ensure that we align our efforts across these two areas to achieve much greater impact. Together, the Sun Movement has learned a great deal about bringing sectors together by building bridges between nations, multilaterals, civil society, and private sector. Sun is ahead of its time in providing a comprehensive response. And of course, strong partnerships are built on clearly defined goals and mutual accountability. And finally, I would be very remiss if I did not mention the Micronutrient Initiative. This is a Canadian success story that has developed a global platform to deliver life-saving micronutrients and vitamins to the developing world. In the coming months, Canada is looking to expand the role of the Micronutrient Initiative in the Sun Movement, so I invite all delegates to become acquainted with their good work, and of course, if needs be, I would be very happy to provide you with an introduction. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak and to highlight Canada's continued commitment to nutrition both today and in the coming decades. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lois Brown, for those very important words. Canada is one of those donors who doesn't just make pledges, they make investments. And on every single pledge that they make, and that deserves a round of applause. So thank you very much. As we go to the audience, I understand that we have the Minister of Agriculture from Madagascar, Minister Rava Tomanga, who is here with us today and who would like to open up our interventions from the floor. Mr. Minister.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam the Chair. I shall speak in French because my English is a bit dodgy, but let me underscore here that I was amongst the signatories of SUN in my country, together with 3 other ministers who've left the government since, and in the framework of all the various commitments of the new government, which took power scarcely 6 months ago, I'm proud to announce all of you that the SUN movement has breathed new life, new conviction into the actions of the recently elected president of the new government in Madagascar. However, we have gone through 5 years of crisis, and this, fortunately, it was a very severe crisis, did not lead to deaths because we fortunately don't have a civil war, but this, the certain shyness in some of our claims has led sometimes us to be forgotten. And the level of aid we received is unfortunately rather low, too low. But despite these considerations, I should also like to tell you that Madagascar's joining the SUN movement has allowed all the Malgache people and the new government to share a positive new vision, the approaches against malnutrition. And via this new vision of SUN, and let me thank all those who have given the initiatives, Madagascar is now on a new path, a new attempt, if you like, to combat malnutrition. There are many positive signs which have been seen lately. In particular, the President of the Republic has ordered that malnutrition be a responsibility directly of the presidency. So he's given it priority, high priority. That means that despite all the difficulties we face, this clear will of the president has awoken considerable enthusiasm amongst the population, a second important sign for our country. The government has appointed a new focal point for Madagascar and a new responsible for national coordination concerning nutrition matters in Madagascar. And this National Nutrition Office, which is directly answerable to the Prime Minister's office, has also given us new zeal. And let me announce to you that Madagascar has decided to convene a national conference and workshop to which all international donors are invited next December. So that altogether, the government and our technical and financial and funding partners could be present, could find new ways to promote nutrition issues in Madagascar, to leave behind persistent malnutrition due to food insecurity. So in a nutshell, this is what I have to tell you all. I'd particularly like to thank not only all of you, but especially WFP, thanks to whom, thanks for inviting us, plus the UNICEF office in Madagascar. With UNICEF and WFP, we are determined to move forward. And of course, let me also thank the World Bank and IFAD. And this has been confirmed. What has been confirmed is a new approach by IFAD and, of course, FAO. And we shall participate with great interest in tomorrow's event, in the ASEAN starting tomorrow.
But we have time for one more intervention from the floor. Who's that person? A woman right here in the front in the blue. Let's get her.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Aminata from Sierra Leone. I want to say thank you to the Sun Global Gathering for having us here today. We've come, we've shared, we've learned, and then we're going to go back home and continue to work very hard. And we have worked very hard. Despite everything that's going on in our country, we have made progress. We did the SMART 2014 this year. The last one we did was 2010. We have reduced stunting from 34 to 28, underweight from 18 to 12, and wasting from 6.9 to 4.7. And we want to thank the Sun movement for energizing us. We're going to go back energized. And we cannot leave here to say thanks to everybody, and this is why this is a true movement. We came here, you have supported us. We feel like we're part of a family, despite everything that is going on in Sierra Leone. On behalf of the delegation, my Deputy Chief Medical Officer, the Sun Coordinator, and my colleague from Agriculture, we want to say thank you very much, and also thank you to Dr. Nabarro for being a champion of Sun, and now he's really, really leading the Ebola fight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, this panel was asked to answer the question of the experience of scaling up nutrition and how can we inform global processes. And we've heard from our panelists on their overarching opinions. I want to put them on the spot a little here, though, before we close for the day. We're going to start at this end and work our way back down. When tweeting, you're only allowed to use so many characters. We're going to say in 5 words, how can Sun influence global processes as we go forward? Let's start with you, Jomo. Give me 5 words or less. How can Sun influence global processes as we go forward?
By working well with others.
By working well with others, that's a good way to do it, of course.
Let us continue with multi-sectoral approach.
Multi-sectoral approach, perfect. Thank you, Petrina.
Energy and political commitment.
Energies and political commitments. I think we can all agree with that. Come on, Madam CEO. No, no, no.
So perhaps together, more investments.
More investments. No, she doesn't want you to take hers. Madam Secretary.
Keep developing unique partnerships.
Keep developing unique partnerships.
Bold, pragmatic, result-oriented, unavoidable, women-centered.
There we go.
Broader engagement, fragile states, and wasting.
All right. And, Madam CEO?
Woman empowerment.
Woman empowerment. Great note to end on. Thank you all very much. Thank you to the panel for your support and for your leadership.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have not quite finished. First of all, I'd like, with all of you, to ask Isatu Jallo to come up onto the stage and to join Earthren Cousin up here. Isatu, are you around, please? And And I've got more people. Could all the Sun Movement Secretariat come up, please, now? All the Sun Movement Secretariat, come up and stand behind the chairs, please. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like now with all of you, I'm going to call out the names, if they could just show who they are. Claudia Michici, Fiona Watson, Patricia Fracazzi, are you there? Just wave, please. Yeah, there you go. Maria Pizzini, there. Breda Gavin, where are you, Breda? There we are. Tween Goyen, yeah. Delphine Babin-Pelliard, merci. Fanny Grandchamp, merci à vous. Alam Katak, there you are, Alam, great. Matt Cousins, Martin Gallagher, Kwame Okoto Danzo, Claudio Lapadatu, Michel Mayer, Jean-Daniel Uncho, Fanny Berger, all around. Eleanor Gaino, Ashley Backstrom, Shayu Lin, and Marlin. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like you all to give a brief applause to these good people. And now I'd like to ask you to applaud in a minute 3 other people. I'd like us, first of all, Earthrin Cousin, our host, who has been absolutely magnificent. I'd like us to now recognise all the IT service interpreters, building services, protocol, visa, printing, security, finance, medical services, communication, conference services of the World Food Programme. Thank you. You have been amazing. Thank you all. And Isatou Jallo, a special thanks to you for all you've made possible. And lastly, I'd just like, there are many people to say thank you. And as Aminata just said, in a movement, you can't say thank you to everybody because we all actually thank each other. But could we please give a very, very special warm applause for somebody I love dearly, who's standing just behind me and who came in, and the movement didn't miss a beat. Here you are, Tom Arnold. And so it's been, for me, memorable to be able to take time out from the other job and just be here with you. I'm so pleased we have delegations here from Guinea, from Sierra Leone, from Liberia, from Mali, from Senegal, from Nigeria. Thank you all for what you're doing. We're going to, together, achieve a good result, hopefully quickly, on that Ebola issue. So thank you all for coming, and it's great that you're with us and mixing with us. This is how it should be. And so to everybody, that's right, no more stigma. And to everybody, wonderful. We've now got one more little item on the agenda, and I obviously I'm so grateful to the Sun Secretariat and what they've done. So grateful to Florence and Matt and others for managing to keep us going, and to all who organised this event. And to help us all celebrate, we've got the Orchestra Piazza Vittorio to join us. So if you just stay there, they'll come. Thanks again.